Hey, I'm Timo. Hi, I'm Timo, and today I'd like to present to you the Lab Rats, who are a new gear lock, so an expansion to the Too Many Bones game. What I like about them, first off, is that they give a new variety to the game, a new tactical depth. But if you're new to the game and this is your first or second run of Too Many Bones, I would not recommend playing them. Pick any other gear lock. But if you're familiar with the game and played a round or two, definitely check them out since they're pretty cool. So, what comes in the box is those four Lab Rats: Slank, Gerbil, Flan, and Helix. And of course, they've got their usual gear lock chips with them, and an initiative die. They have these cool looking dice coming with them. Then they've got these 3 health chips, because you need quite a lot of health chips, and so that you don't run out of them. These are, well, triple health chips. Then, of course, you get the usual overview with all the dice and all the skills they have, and a general overview, which I will explain to you in a bit. And also, because there wasn't enough space to get these small handy cards with one side some cool artwork, and on the other the explanations of the backup plans and the innate of the 4. So first off, it's important to understand that they all are somehow combined in one gear lock. So at any given time there will be a max of one of them on the battle mat, and they share their loot, so all of them together cannot have more than 4 loot, except they carry heavy loot, of course, then it's only 2. They share a common set of stat dice. They have a common pool of skill dice. Yeah, and at the beginning of the game, you choose to play 2 of the 4. Let's say I'll start with Gerbil and Slank. That means let's put these away. But during the game, you could add other Lab Rats one by one, and that definitely makes sense. So you really want to achieve that because, as I already said, they share the dice here. So if you start with Gerbil and Slank, you can only have the purple and the blue stat die at the beginning. You will recognize that the dice, but they only go from 1 to 3, so not to 6 as usual. And if I had a training point, or let's say I start in the easy mode with 2 extra health, I'll just put it here, and this also counts for Slank. So now Gerbil has 5 health, but so does Slank. So I'll just put it underneath here, so that you see that. And at any given time, only one of them is active, and you can see that because of the dice. So let's say I got another training point and I wanted to have more defense. I roll defense dice as usual to see whether or not I got bones. Not in this case because it's 0. So I would put Slank's die here, and now I got 1 defense. So she is active, or as we call it, tagged in. That means that she would get all the dice. Also, the skill dice. Let's say I'd had another training point and I wanted to learn this here, then I'll just put it there. I might as well learn some of Slang's dice, the blue ones, and put it there. It is important that I always pick the die with the number 1 on it. In order to learn the second skill here, I had to use a training point, discard the number 1 and put the number 2 in here. So I can never have 2 dice of the same color in my skill pool. So I'm always upgrading them. And the color doesn't matter. So even, let's say, Flan is not in play yet, I could still learn this yellow skill, which belongs to Flan. So in this case, the color doesn't matter. Okay, I could also learn Helix skill die here and have it like that. But it would not possible for me to have any other color more than once. If for any reason I would get a concealable die, maybe I have a Fortunate Discovery loot card, or other reasons, then it wouldn't fit here, so I had to discard one die, any one die, to be able to put it here, or just say, well, I don't want that now. Okay, maybe later. But I always have a maximum of 4 skill dice. Now, why are there different colors? It is always best to roll your own color. So let's say it's gerbil here in play, and when I roll this skill die, it does not exhaust, so I'll put it always back here after use. That is very handy. But if I use this one, which obviously belongs to Slang, you can see by the color, and use it, and then I can use it as normal, but then as normal skill die, it is exhausted, and I cannot get it back until the end of battle, except for some special skills or loot that might enable me to do that. But usually it's out of the game. Same is true for all other colors but my own. And since there are not fully trained gearlocks but interns, the problem is that some sides of the die have these malfunction symbols on them. And whenever I roll a malfunction, I cannot choose not to use it and just put it back for later, but I have to choose it. Here in this case it will be the bones or what have you, or this side, I'll explain that later. And then you use it, you have to use it immediately, and then it's not only exhausted but also put back here. So it's for the time being out of the game until you start learning that skill again. Okay, using usually a training point. So you do not want to have malfunctions on dice that do not belong to your color. Because if I rolled with gerbil the purple die and I rolled a malfunction, it wouldn't matter. I could still use it or not. I could keep it. It's not exhausted. It's not discarded. I'll just keep it like that. So that is the advantage of using a die with the color of the lab rat that is active, that is tagged in at the moment. So I play with gerbil now, but at the end of my turn, so I go second here, this is my initiative die, and at the end of my turn, after I did whatever I wanted to do, I can say, I'll tag out. So I'll turn it like that, then the round is played till its end. Then when the next round starts, so at the end of the round, I'll put her away and tag in Slang. So he goes into the same position that gerbil was, keeping the initiative. So it's not moved in here or there or wherever. It just stays there. And he will gain all the dice that Gerbil had. And if Gerbil had used this die, for example, and it was exhausted, it doesn't come back now because now I have the right color. It was used by Gerbil, who was not blue, so it's exhausted and I cannot roll it in this battle. So, but now the purple die could be exhausted. Cannot because it's Slank, I'll come to that later, but usually it could be exhausted because I don't play with Gerbil anymore. But everything else stays. And let's say when Gerbil was still here, she had she was poisoned by this Borglurk over here, and let's say I had Dart playing alongside, and she got this beneficial die, and now I tagged her out and Slank comes into play, then he will also get those dice when he comes in at the end of the round, and at the start of his turn he would get two true damage and get 1 bone here. So even the dice carry over, and if she had some sort of loot, it would also, since they share that, Slank would get that also. So everything, they just swap places. There's one special case. So let's say Gerbil was still tagged in, like that. And maybe I was low on health, like having only 2 health points left. And then my turn ends and I think, well, he will poison me for 2, and he will attack me with 2 attack dice, so I will probably won't survive this. Then I can say I'll tag out and tag Slank in. And now the good thing is, even if she was KO'd, so let's say he rolled at least 2 attack, then she would be KO'd, having no death dice whatsoever. Then in this case, because I announced the tagging out and tagging in, at the beginning of the next round, or rather at the end of this round, Slank would still come into play. But this time, on a position of my choice, since he's a melee character, it had to be one of the 3. I could also put him here, but I could also say, well, I'd rather want him here. That would be perfectly okay. Still, he would keep the initiative die and get everything that Gerbil had. Of course not the poison die, because she got KO'd before, losing all her dice, and now he comes back onto the mat. So you can kind of plan on that when you see somebody's low on health and probably won't survive this round. Tag him or her out, and then if you still got some left, Slank will come and she would just be tagged out. You cannot do it as often as you wish, because once a character is tagged out, no matter whether or not KO'd, he or she cannot come back in this battle, except for special reasons. But usually, if one's tagged out, she's done with this battle, and the others can keep fighting on. If I had already another one here, then then I could say, well, at the end of his turn, I'll tag him out and she'll be tagged in, receiving all the dice here, changing to Flan here, and then everything goes on as usual. Now, how do I get more than the starting 2? That is by the backup plan. So the innate +1 is, so usually you have 4 places here for the backup plan, and whenever you have 6 bones and use them, then your gear log gets upgraded. But not in this case. So when you have it's full here and you get a fourth bone and then you use it, that means that you get another. You are free to choose one of the left lab rats to join us. And as you can see here, doesn't have any stars on the back, but just this symbol meaning go get a new lab rat. And this is definitely what you want to do as soon as possible, since you can stay alive longer in battle, since now you can play 4, taking them out one by one. But also, when Flank comes into play, you also get her die. So when you get training points, you could say, well, I already got more health and defense, now I want to get more dexterity. When she's not in play, you're not allowed to use her stat die. And again, if you put this there, it affects everybody. So if Helix would be tagged in, he would also get these upgraded stats. And if Helix is there, you can also upgrade the 4th stat. It doesn't have to be attack. Whatever you chose before can now training points be used for that. So this is why it is important to get more of the lab rats into play as soon as possible. So this is how they behave during play here. Now I'd like to talk about the different skills. And as you can see, since now you've got 4 of them, if everybody gets his or her health points, you could quickly run out of them. So this is why you get the 3s here. And so she would have 5, so you could do it like that to save some of those. And he would have 6, so you can do it just like that. And you would not run out of health chips. So let's come to their skills. I'll quickly go through them. Let's start with Gerbil here. So every one of them has an innate. So innate +1, as I already mentioned, was to get another of the lab rats into play. And they got also their own innate, and she's got the innate. So whenever a baddie is killed and she is tagged in, then she gets a bone into her. Just take die from the supply and put 1 bone there. It's not necessary that she kills the baddie. It's just important that a baddie got killed. Then she got 3 options in her backup plan. Swipe left, so 1 bone means that she can deal 1 true damage to an adjacent baddie. 2 mean that she can place a bleed effect die on any adjacent baddie. And 3 means that she can heal any inactive, so tagged out lab rat, and can immediately tag them in. So let's say I had already used Slank here and he would run low or even got KO'd. Then I could use the 3 bones here. I had 3 bones. I could use them and say I'll put him back to full health and tag him in, getting to use him again this round. So this is really useful, giving me more options and staying alive longer during battle. Then we have Slank here, and Slank can ignore malfunctions. So even, I hinted at that before, even if you rolled another color's die, let's say this one, and rolled a malfunction, he can ignore it, meaning you wouldn't have to use this bone, but just put it back here to roll it again later turn. and he wouldn't have to discard the die. Even if he used it, it would just be exhausted. So that is quite useful. Then on one bone, he can acquire any level 1 skill die. Any, as far as that color is not in play already. So I could say I use 2 bones, I mean 1 bone, and put in the blue one here. If I had the level 2 purple, I could of course not get the level 1 purple, since that is not allowed. For 2 bones, handy, I can set the round counter to 6, so that everyone from now on will lose 1 health every round. Very tactical choice here. And then de-escalate with 3 bones. I could place a stun effect on any 5-point or less baddie on the battle mat. So this is very powerful. Overall, I have to say that I find all of their backup plans very powerful. Flan, she's resourceful. That on each of her turns she can re-roll 1 die. So let's say I roll these 3 attack dice, and I don't like this one, then I can just re-roll it before use, and now I've got a 2, which is better. On one bone, big bolts, she can place 1 poison effect die on any 2 baddies. So I could place 1 here and then another one here, for example. On 2 bones, I could transfer a death die from any unit to another one. So let's say I had a death die here. This is Flan, so she would have to be in play, tagged in. Then I could say, I don't really need it right now, so let's give it to another gear lock. Or even more powerful, let's say the Orc Axe Bearer had rolled this. Then I could use 2 bones and say, well, I think I'm going to steal that, and now I'm going to attack you. So very powerful. And then with 3 bones, I can place a poison 2 effect on 2 different baddies. Helix, he can use skill dice at no dex cost. So now he's got a dex of 4. He could use both attack and both defense dice and still roll skill dice, since they don't cost any dex for him. On 1 bone, he would improvise. That means that he would get 2 bones. So let's say I'd use this, put it out, then I get 2 bones for that. Then he's got the equipment mod with 2. This means when he uses 2 bones, he can change the result of any 2 unused just rolled dice. So let's say I'd roll these 4 dice, then I can use 2 bones and say I'll change this and that to 2s, making this the best roll ever, huh? And then on 3 bones, he can draw a loot card. So during battle. So that's really powerful. Personally, I recommend starting with Helix because he is the hardest to take down at the beginning, at least, because he's got the most health, and also starting with a defense die. And because of improvise, so being able to use 1 bone to make it 2, he easily gets to 4 bones, recruiting other lab rats. So I'd recommend starting with him, that more join the party earlier. So these are the backup plans. Then let me quickly talk about their skills, about their skill dice. Not to make any rule goofs, I'll take the sheet here. So let's start with Slank. He's got the Bladerator, meaning each and every one has got 2 different skills, and he's got exhaustion. So when I put this on a baddie, on its turn, he would get 1 true damage, and then this is a counter. It would be counted 1 down. Since it's only 1, it's only for 1 round. But let's say I had this one, then he would get 1 true damage and then turn down, and next round he would again receive 1 true damage. And the other thing here is provoke. Oh, by the way, exhaustion can only apply to an adjacent baddie. So it could only, if she rolled it, it could only be here. Provoke can only be added to a non-adjacent baddie. So one of the 2 here. And it means that they would receive this much of damage. So in this case 2. And they would come immediately, since being provoked, after her. So let's say I rolled it and attacked him. He would be hit twice. He's hardy, so he'd only lose 1. And then he would go immediately after her. If I was a bit away, so that he wouldn't be adjacent, if I hit him, he would lose 2. And then he would come up immediately after my turn. So that is provoke. And they've got bones. So the lesser the number of the level of the die, the more bones they got on them. Next one is Gerbil. And Gerbil's got the pulse emitter. It's this symbol, meaning that if you had a successful attack die rolled alongside, then that would be added. So in this case, this would deal 2 damage. And I need a higher die for that. In this case, this would deal 3 damage. But keep in mind, it's only added to 1. Let's say I rolled these dice, then this would deal 3 damage, but this one would only deal 1, since this only applies to one attack die. And then we've also got the Spatial Disruptor, and this means I can place my lab rat on a new position and also choosing a new target. Let's say I rolled this, then I can say, well, this ranged baddie here, I don't like him. Well, now I'm range 2, but let's say it was Slank and it would take a long time for him to get there. I could roll this, and when standing here, and I could say I'd like to go to this position and get a new target, so I'll attack him for 2. That would be possible. And then Slank and Gerbil together have a level 4 die, which is this one. So with the purple level 3 or the blue level 3 die, you can, with a training point, upgrade it to this level 4 die, being the same. And this die is very powerful. It can add 3 to a successful attack roll. It can infinitely, so until the end of battle, each round deal 1 true damage to the baddie, which affects. It has 2 bones, which is quite a lot. If you think about that, you only have 3 slots here. And then you have something especially powerful, and that is called Execute. So here you can execute a baddie of 5 points or less, or 20 points or less, so basically any baddie. And if it is adjacent to you, you can deal it 2 true damage. But if it's in the fatigue round, or if it's got an exhaustion marker on it, then you can immediately, if adjacent, take it off the battle mat. So even if it's a level 20 baddie and you're next to it and it's got exhaustion on it, or it's in a fatigue round, you can immediately take it off the battle mat. So very powerful. This die doesn't belong to any specific character in terms of exhaustion. So whoever rolls it, it can only be used one and then exhausted, even by Gerbil or Slank. But it has no malfunction on any side, meaning it is never discarded unless you wanted to, which would be pretty stupid. And after battle or through certain effects of unexhausting a die, you would get it back. Yeah, let's come to Helix. He's got also two different symbols here, one being the reverberator. That means you put it in your active slot or in some other Gearlock's active slot, and whenever you get attacked, you get to attack back for any death die that were removed, and you deal that much damage back. It sounds complicated, but it isn't. So let's say this was my active slot and Slank is in play. I don't put everything over here, but imagine he's tagged in. And now I get attacked and losing this die. So I lost one die and 2 damage for every die lost. So I'll deal 2 damage back. Or if I had these here and now somebody attacks me for at least 2 damage, I'll discard them, and for every die discarded this way I'll deal 2, so a total of 4 damage back. And it's only because of the dice and not because of the number on them. So even here, if I got at least 4 damage and they would be removed, I could only deal 4 damage back, since it's 2 times 2. And then we also have this, which looks a bit like a sandwich, doesn't it? But it's the Absorberator. And so the next time this unit loses any amount of health, let's say I got attacked and lose 1, I get this much death dice here. So I can choose to put a 2 here, or maybe 2 1s, as I wish. So whenever I lose health, I get this amount of death dice. So these are Helix dice. And then we've got Flan left, which I didn't explain yet. She's got this symbol, which is the Regenerator, which means that you can heal any unit on the battle mat or even inactive lab rats for this amount of health. So I could heal anybody for 2. She's also got this thing here, which is a counter, so I'll put it on 2 to make it clear. It's the force field. It can remove a negative effect, or it can avoid getting one. So let's say I got poisoned and I roll this, then I can use it once and remove this thing here. Or let's say I got attacked by this guy here and he wants to give me the poison, then I'll just take it down, not getting the negative effect here. Flan and Helix also share a common level 4 die, and this is this one with a level 3 Absorberator, 4 healing, 2 bones, and 3 sides with untargetable on them. So this is also a very powerful die that you want to get as soon as possible. The lab rats, oh my, the lab rats also have 2 consumable dies. One with a 1 on it and one with a 2. That doesn't mean that this is the second level of this or anything like that. It's just because every die in this game has got numbers, so do they. So the first one is you can roll duct tape, which means if I put this in my active slot, then for the rest of this battle I wouldn't be affected by malfunctions. So Slank is never affected by that, but if I tag in somebody else, then it wouldn't matter if I rolled malfunctions. And also I can get lots of bones from this die. And the second one is this one, the Rejuvenator. If I roll the Magnetic Restorative Imaging, it means that I heal any unit. No, not any, but all units. And even inactive lab rats for 2. So this means not only Gearlocs, but any unit. So also this one, and he's lost some, so he'd get 2 back. So you got to be careful when to use this. Usually when they're still full of health and you're not, or you want to heal some guys over here, or maybe as the last line of defense. Then you also got Power Nap, my favorite name here. Power Nap means that you can turn a tagged out lab rat back so that this one can again enter battle. Well, in this case she'd be KO'd already, but if she had some health left, she could re-enter battle later. Yeah, so these are how they work. And as I said before, it's very interesting to play with them. Lots of tactics involved here. When do I tag somebody in, somebody out? Which are the most useful skills and backup plans at the moment? Or maybe I want to get to the level 4 die as soon as possible, so I don't want any malfunctions to interfere with that. So maybe I'll play Slank, or mostly use the die of the same color I'm playing with at the moment. Also, if I see, well, he's probably will not survive this round, so let's tag him out and bring somebody else in. So this is very tactical, and this is why I do not recommend it for the first or even second game of Bones, but later. They are so cool to play, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. These are the lab rats. Have fun playing them. High five? High five? High five? High five? High five? Lucky Lux? Lucky Lux?